What's up, guys? So someone asked me, how much knowledge does one have to begin practicing this religion? How to practice praying to the gods? And that's not a stupid question. So to answer that, we have to first decide who and what the gods are and what that requires to connect with them. So depending where you come from in your life, you already have a preconceived notion of what and who the gods are. Are the gods the malevolent, jealous beings that rule the world, that punish us? Are they the ones that are more like a Christian God that do this and that? Who are the gods? That's we already have our ideas of who they are when we come into the spirituality. And we bring a lot of Christian baggage with us if we happen to come from that religion or any other religion that we come from before we discover this one or want to try to get into Hellenic polytheism. We have spiritual baggage from the past. If you are coming in from atheists, if you come in from atheism, then you have that baggage of it, finding it hard to even just believe that there is something out there. So we all come from other places carrying luggage as we board this plane for our destination to Hellenic polytheism. And sometimes the luggage can be pretty heavy. So to keep it simple, the gods are not what you see on TV, literally. And you learn this through studies. If you study different philosophers of the past, all the way up to now, I like to focus on the philosophers that are currently in Greece and the ones that lived in those times in the later antiquity. So the one that I follow the most of is Sallustius. If you follow me for a while, you know that I am a follower of Sallustius, and I really enjoy his view on the gods. Now, Sallustius was a Roman during the time of Emperor Julian, whenever they were trying to see the return of the worship of the ancient gods during a time when Christianity was on the rise. And not only was it Sallustius, but other philosophers. And then you move up closer to our time, and you had Platon, who also viewed the gods in a similar way. So what was the view on the gods? The view on the gods was this: that this is not Aphrodite, as we call her, or in Greek, Aphrodite. So this is not Aphrodite. Aphrodite and the gods are just the conscious energies that help the universe flow. That is what the gods are. They are not physically human looking because they are not in physical human bodies, which is why we can't see them with our physical eyes. This is just created to help give us a focus point to help focus when we pray. So it's Platon, a philosopher, that said that if horses were the predominant intelligent species of the planet, then the gods would look like horses. So, in other words, it's what I said, that the gods don't have physical bodies and they do not look human. It is easier to think of them more, as I mentioned already, as conscious energies that create the universe and sustain it to keep it going as it is. And you study more. I don't want to get too deep for beginners, but you study more and then you realize and you read about the source, the first cause, they call it, which was their Big Bang, a spiritual thought of the Big Bang. You can think of it as a spiritual Big Bang, was the original beginning of life. And that took on multiple forms, which became known as we see it, the gods. there was one source that became the gods. So, kind of in a way, kind of like in Hinduism, how they see it as one god taking on multiple forms, kind of like that. So, that is the essence of who the gods are. And again, you don't learn that until you start studying and reading different philosophers. And there are a lot of different theories and views of who the gods are when it comes to who they are, the nature of who they are. That's just one line of thought that carries on even to today. You read books like the book I'm currently reading right now about Greek mysticism by George Lizos, that I am going to be doing a review of when I get through with it. He's in the same thought as Sallustius, and even mentions Sallustius and the view that the gods are not physical and bodies, because it's very limiting to them. So they are everywhere. So when you think of the Greeks and the Greek gods, I should say, you can think of them as the spirit of that thing. So when you say that Aphrodite, I always want to call her Aphrodite, the Greek version of her name. So when you say that she is the goddess of love, what we are really saying, if you believe in this philosophy, is that she is love in all of its forms, that she literally is love, that you see people in relationships, and that's Aphrodite. You see people with broken hearts, and that's the realm of love, and that's Aphrodite. You see sex, that's Aphrodite. And so when you say the goddess of, you're really saying she is this, and not literally, but the spirit behind it. And like I said, I don't want to get too deep for those that are new, but the more you study and the more you learn, you find what philosophy makes sense to you. And so to find out what that is, you just have to study. So the question was, what do I have to know to begin praying to these gods? That's the real question that someone asked me. How much do I have to know? And you don't have to know that much. You just have to decide who the gods are. So if you view the gods the way I do, there's not much to know in beginning other than to look up and look in the world around you and realize that the gods are everywhere. I think we all agree that the gods are everywhere, especially if you see them as the force behind everything we see and can't see. You realize how much they inhabit this world and universe. So I would say start with praying, just talking to the gods. And that's as simple as it is. You just pray. Don't worry about all the rules right now, because there are many people that don't follow the rules that we would say are the rules, such as you will hear people that say you have to wash before you pray and this and that. But when we all are beginning and we all start, we just start praying. Most of us just start praying, not knowing the rules that we put on to part of the ceremony. And the more deeper you get into it, then you can start putting on the rules of you have to bathe to wash off what we call miasma, what people call miasma or miasma, and so forth. And like I said, I would just start praying, because it's all formality to get us in the spiritual mindset to connect to the gods. And it's out of respect is why people say that we need to be washed and clean before we pray. But the incense and the offerings and all of that is just to put us into the right frame of mind to connect with the energies that we call the gods. And we feel the gods when we finally line up to the right energies. And again, that's a way of thinking. That's a philosophy that not everyone agrees with, but that's how I view the gods. And because that's how many Greeks in Greece in the past and currently view the gods. And that's the way I take it. I never take Greece and the Greeks out of it. And a lot of people get the spirituality complicated because we are so more immersed in media and mythology and so forth. And we don't realize that there is a difference between theology and mythology, that mythology is not gospel, that it is symbolism for telling a greater truth, that we have to look deeper into to really understand what's being said. So the good news is that in this philosophy of thinking, that the gods are not angry, that the gods are loving and they're flowing, and like I said, they're the continual force of the universe. And there you go. So to end this video really fast, so some of the books that I would recommend to get you going, that would really be a good place to start if you're really looking for some books, trying to organize it from the simplest to the most complicated. So I will pull them out and show you guys real fast. So this is a book that really helped me out when I first started, that a lot of people recommend. It is Hellenic Polytheism, Household Worship by Labris. And this is, again, a book written from Hellenic polytheists in Greece. And it gives you an idea of how they practice their spirituality, which, again, I pay attention to since this is Greek polytheism. So who better to learn from than the Greeks? And that's one problem, especially us here in the English-speaking countries, is that we don't have many resources that are translated into English to help us out. And so we really don't understand everything. We have to learn from paganism and Wicca and stuff, which is not Hellenic polytheism. I remember talking, let me tell you a story real fast. Multiple camera angles from tired arms, so I'm having to switch hands. So the story I have for you guys is that there was once upon a time I went and I tried to join a local pagan Facebook group for the state I live in. And one way or the other, the gods were brought up. And I was on the side of defending the gods. And they were on the side of, how can you worship this god, that god? Because they did this and that in the myths. So paganism and pagans that don't study Hellenic polytheism still take the Greek myths literal. And that's a downfall of, again, I think, of not having many Greek sources to read here that are translated into English. So whenever I do find books that are from Greece translated into English, I definitely gravitate towards that and read and learn from the source. So this book is very complicated, especially if you get it, depending on the style of English it's written in. You have one that's written in the more ancient style of English, I guess you could say, that uses bigger words and so forth. But Sallustius on the Gods in the World is my view of how I view the gods, as the energies and so forth. And the gods are naturally good in that they don't have wrath towards us, that it is us and our failings when we fall out of line with the good due to how we are behaving or our way of thinking, that we pull ourselves out of what we'd call the light. But when we get our thinking right and get back into the ritual state of mind, we align back into the good. And that's how we find the gods. Anyway, Sallustius on the Gods in the World is the book that changed my life. The work from Sallustius that changed my life. So again, this can get a little complicated. I would recommend it a little later in your studies. But you can find a modern English translation that's a little easier to read online, and it's easier to make more sense than trying to digest so much of this work and then trying to digest those words. So definitely find what version works for you and definitely give that a look. I mentioned Plethon, and this is the last one. If you want another view of the gods that I have read, that is The Secrets of Hellenic Polytheism. Gives you a taste of Plethon, who was a philosopher in later times. I'm talking like, I think it was like the 1400s or something, way after Rome or the Roman Empire and all that, when Christianity was norm like it is now. So like I said, like in the 1400s. Plethon had a way different view and a very non-traditional view of the gods that you will find interesting or may find to be more of your cup of tea. So if you want to see something completely out of the norm that not many people really practice nowadays, study Plethon. But to answer the question is to pray. That's how we always get started. And then the traditions, the philosophies, and the views on the gods come later. So pray, find your connection, and find what works for you. And that's all there is to it. So I hope that helped. Try not to get too complicated about doing this or that. Because when we start out, we just want to know how to get started. And that's how you get started. You just pray. Anyway, guys, I will talk to you later. Bye.